I spent 40 years at a job I hated, just to retire feeling empty. I didn't expect the quiet to be so loud. The first Monday of my retirement, I woke up at 6:30 a.m. out of habit. My body had grown used to the alarm, even when there wasn't. 1. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. No meetings, no deadlines, no commute. No one waiting for me. I had spent 4 decades waking up for someone else, and now I didn't know how to wake up for myself. I wandered into the kitchen, poured a cup of coffee, and sat at the table. The house was still. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the rustle of the newspaper still in its plastic sleeve outside the door. For the first time in 40 years, there was no one emailing me, calling me, asking me to solve something. And instead of relief, I felt empty. Deeply, frighteningly empty. You see, I worked for 40 years at a job I didn't love. It paid the bills. It bought the house. It gave my family a good life. But it took something from me too. Something I didn't notice slipping away until it was gone. Passion. Wonder. A sense of why. I was so focused on doing the right thing, being the provider, climbing a ladder I didn't question, that I never stopped to ask myself where that ladder was actually leading. Everyone tells you retirement is the reward. That if you work hard enough, stay loyal, and push through the hard days, you'll get to rest. But no one tells you how strange that rest feels when you never really lived with joy in the first place. They don't tell you how hard it is to relax when all you've ever done is endure. I don't say this to make you feel sorry for me. I say this because maybe, just maybe, you're sitting at your own kitchen table wondering if there's more. Maybe you're still showing up every day for a paycheck that doesn't inspire you, telling yourself it's just for now. Maybe you've stopped dreaming a long time ago and don't even realize it. I get it. I've lived it. But I want to talk to you honestly, not to preach, but to share. Because I don't want you to reach the end of a 40-year journey only to discover you never actually went anywhere that mattered to your heart. Let me tell you what those years taught me. And what I finally understand now that the noise is gone. I didn't grow up dreaming of working in insurance. I don't think anyone really does. But somehow, that's where I landed. Not because I loved it. Not because I had some natural talent for policies and risk assessments, but because it was available, because it was stable, because, at the time, having a job seemed more important than choosing one. It started right after college. I had bills, student loans, and a nagging fear of falling behind. I remember thinking, just get your foot in the door, any door. You can figure it out later. That's the trap, isn't it? The quiet kind. You take a job just to get by. You tell yourself it's temporary. You make peace with the dullness because you think it's just a stepping stone. But weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And without realizing it, you become good at something you don't enjoy. You get promoted. You get a raise. You start getting praised for work you don't even care about. And praise, even when it's for the wrong things, feels good. So you stay, you settle. You shrink your dreams to fit the life you've chosen. Or rather, the one that chose you. It's not that I was miserable every day. I had coworkers I liked. I got to travel once in a while. There were moments, small ones, when I felt useful. But deep down, I knew I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. I wasn't lit up by my work. I was just competent, efficient, a solid employee. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I wanted. I started measuring my worth by my productivity, my performance reviews, my salary bracket. I stopped dreaming of different paths. Not because they weren't possible, but because I was too tired to imagine them anymore. That's how the drift happens. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's slow, silent, subtle. And by the time you look up, decades have passed. And you're no longer someone choosing your life. You're someone maintaining it. I didn't realize how much I'd lost until the losses started stacking up in ways I couldn't ignore. I missed birthdays. Not just one or two, a lot of them. My daughter's school plays. My son's baseball games. Dinners where I should have been fully present, but my head was still at the office. I told myself I was providing for them, doing what needed to be done. And I was also teaching them, without meaning to, that my job came first. There were years when my wife and I were more like co-workers sharing a house than partners building a life. I was exhausted, numb, emotionally unavailable. And she, strong as she was, carried more than her fair share without ever asking for credit. I'd come home late, kiss her on the cheek, and fall asleep in front of the TV. We stopped laughing. We stopped dreaming out loud. We just survived. I got used to the dread. The Sunday night heaviness in my chest. The pit in my stomach when I thought about Monday morning. I thought it was normal, just part of being a real adult. Everyone hated Mondays, right? Everyone felt tired all the time, didn't they? What I didn't realize is that I had been slowly hollowing myself out. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even bored. I was just flat, unmoved. I had numbed myself to the point where nothing stirred me anymore. Not joy, not pain. Just a quiet resignation that this was it. The life I had built. My body started showing signs too. Back pain, high blood pressure, tension that no massage could ease, sleepless nights, a feeling of tightness in my chest that would come and go. I ignored it, pushed through, took a few pills, skipped a few meals, told myself I'd rest once things calmed down. But things never did. They just changed form. One stressor replaced another. One crisis gave way to a deadline. And I, like clockwork, kept going. I didn't know the real cost until I realized I didn't know how to stop. Retirement was supposed to feel like freedom. That's what they told me. That's what I believed. You work hard, you save, you endure, and then someday, you finally get to breathe. I imagined long mornings with coffee on the porch, traveling with my wife, catching up on books, hobbies, sleep. I imagined a lighter version of life, slower, sweeter, earned. But what I didn't expect was the loss of identity. The unraveling. The first few days were fine, restful, even. I cleaned out the garage. I organized old photos. I fixed a leaky faucet. But by the second week, I was pacing, agitated. I started waking up without purpose, without urgency, and it scared me. For 40 years, I had been needed, expected, important in my own small way. Now, I was just a guy at home. No emails, number, calls, no meetings, just silence. My wife noticed it before I did. The way I'd sit in the same chair for hours. The way I'd look out the window like I was waiting for something that wasn't coming. She asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, but I wasn't. I was lost. Not because I didn't have a job anymore, but because I had spent my whole life being defined by that job. And without it, I didn't know who I was. I saw friends fade away, the ones I only ever talked to in the break room or during meetings. I realized how few deep relationships I'd maintained, how many people I'd drifted from over the years. I had colleagues, I had acquaintances, but close friends? Not many. And the regret, it came slowly but steadily. Regret over trips not taken, over conversations I rushed through, over dreams I left in a drawer. I didn't hate my life, but I couldn't help but wonder what it could have been if I had just dared to choose differently, even once. They say retirement is the beginning of your life. For me, it felt more like an echo of all the things I didn't do. It didn't happen overnight. No great revelation, no lightning bolt of purpose. Just a quiet nudge, a thought that maybe I hadn't reached the end of my story yet. I remember it clearly. I was at the park, sitting on a bench while the late Afternoon sun cast long shadows over the grass. A little boy was learning to ride his bike, wobbly and terrified, his dad jogging behind him, arms outstretched. I watched as the boy fell, cried, got up and tried again. I must have watched them for half an hour. And for the first time in a long while, something in me stirred. A memory, maybe. A longing. A kind of ache that wasn't pain. It was aliveness. I went home that evening and dug out a box of old things from the attic. Notebooks I'd kept from my 20s. Inside, I found pages of poetry, sketches, half-written short stories. Ideas I had once thought I'd turn into something. I hadn't touched them in decades. I sat there on the floor with those dusty pages in my lap and thought, he's still in there. The kid who dreamed. That was the beginning. I started small, volunteered twice a week at the local library, signed up to mentor young men looking for career direction. Not because I had all the answers, but because I knew what it felt like to be lost. I learned to cook, not just heat things up. Took long walks without music or podcasts, just me and the sound of the world. I called people I hadn't talked to in years. Some conversations were short. Some changed everything. I stopped trying to make sense of the past. Stopped punishing myself for the choices I didn't know how to make differently. And somewhere in all that, I discovered something unexpected. Peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of being present, of living without rushing, of finally listening to the small voice inside me that had been whispering for years, "This isn't all you are." I wish I had heard it sooner, but I'm grateful I heard it at all. Now, when people ask me how retirement is going, I smile. Not because I'm relaxing, but because I'm finally living. In a way I never allowed myself to before. Not for applause, not for a paycheck, just because it feels right. And if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this: meaning doesn't shout. It waits quietly for you to stop running. I spent 40 years showing up to a job that didn't make me feel alive. I convinced myself it was noble, responsible, adult, and maybe in some ways it was, but it wasn't me. Not the real me. And when I finally stepped away, what I was left with wasn't pride. It was a quiet grief. Not just for the time lost, but for the self I abandoned to keep the machine running. But here's the thing no one tells you. It's never too late to come back to yourself. To pick up the pieces of who you used. To be. To dream again. Even if your hands shake when you reach for it. Maybe you're not at the end of your career yet. Maybe you're right in the thick of it, telling yourself the same things I did, that you'll find time later, that your passions can wait, that one day you'll finally do what you really love. Don't wait for the silence to realize what the noise has been drowning out. Ask yourself now, not tomorrow, not in 10 years. Am I becoming who I want to be? You don't need to quit your job to answer that. You don't need to burn your life down and start from scratch. But you do need to listen, to pause, to question. Because drifting is easy, but regret is heavy. And the sooner you notice, the sooner you can begin the quiet work of turning around. Not for applause, not for a promotion. Just for you. Because you're worth knowing, outside of what you produce, outside of who you serve, outside of what your title says. The question isn't, what do you do? It's, are you alive? In it? And if not, when will you be?